The reason why I have this structure is because all of this can be measured. So all of these types of toxicities can be measured. And we will come to each of them briefly in the next slides. Now, before we go to that, it's good to understand that there are three big sources of toxicity at work. One, and this is the one that most of the professionals recognize, they say, I have a toxic colleague, or I have a toxic boss, or I have a toxic direct report. Sometimes the fact that the boss is toxic makes it that the perception of the individual is that the whole leadership is toxic. Sometimes if two of the colleagues are toxic, then the person thinks that the whole team is toxic. But it's good when we can understand that it's just one person or just a few persons and not the environment, because this brings us to the next point, and this is a very tough situation to be in when you are working in a toxic culture. When you have the organizational culture that is built in such a way with managers and layers of people that came and added their toxicity to the environment. If the environment is left on its own and then everybody does whatever they can to fulfill their own goals and they are not aligned, the organizational culture will become toxic. And then no matter how many people you add, how many good people, good professionals you add, they will not change it just by the virtue of their intuition. They will either leave or they will adjust their behaviors to fit that environment, to be able to operate in that environment. And now there is a third source of toxicity that I've met every once in a while, and it's good to acknowledge that too, and that is each of us. There are situations in which the person that is complaining is actually the source of toxicity. And it's not because they are a bad person, but because they went through some traumas, either in that same company or in other companies. And then they never removed that luggage. Now, it's important to understand that source of toxicity so that we transform it. If we believe that it's outside of us, but actually we bring it to the table, then we cannot do anything. Nobody will change, and by default, we will change as well. We have to acknowledge it. Now, what we do, or how should we approach each of these three? If there is a colleague or a boss or a direct report that is toxic, that can be analyzed and can be troubleshooted with coaching sessions. And that is also a way to distinguish that it's not you that is bringing the toxicity to work. You can patch the boundaries with your colleagues or with your boss. You can understand what's under your control and what's not. You can learn politics. If the organizational culture is as such, politics is not a bad thing. Office politics can be very functional and can make a tough work environment deliver and be quite competitive. You can learn about negotiations to know how to deal with tougher colleagues. And of course, in your own time, meditation always helps to remove the negative energy that you get at work. When we're talking about toxic culture or a toxic work environment, it's good to understand that the only way to change it, or the only way to transition to something more pleasant, is to diagnose it, to understand which type of toxicity we are talking about, and in relationship with which goals that the organization wants to achieve, and do a good process of organizational transformation, a standard process of organizational transformation. Now, if the source of toxicity is the professional, so the professional themselves, then it has to start with the self-awareness. It has to start with acknowledging that yes, you might be bringing something to the toxicity of the environment. And then you can apply everything that was applied on the first point, with the coaching, with the working on the boundaries, with learning negotiation and politics, and doing meditation.